Get ready, everyone, and you just might survive. Ruben and Jason are here with their X-Men deep dive. Going through all the X-books is their mission, so get ready for the Learned Edition. Things are getting weird in here. Ruben hopes another sword book gets announced this year. It's the Weird Dose of X, the X-Men comic show. It's the Weird Dose of X, guaranteed. It's the Weird Dose of X, guaranteed not to blow.
How dare
Set
you!
your mind. It's the Weird Dose of X, the X-Men comic show. It's the Weird Dose of X, guaranteed not to blow. Accept your mind.
Welcome all you weirdos, giant Amazonian anacondas, and everyone who knows that obsidian doesn't come from swamps. It is time to receive your 144th Weird Dose of X, the mutant member of your Weird Science podcast family. I am your anime overdosed host, Jason, broadcasting as always from the Wrong Turn studio, perched high atop stately Weird Science Tower. And with me is the second biggest fan, after Richard Rider, of Jean Grey's new costume. It's my pal Ruben. Hey Ruben, how the heck are you today?
Yeah, it's my favorite character. I'm doing great because we get to talk about Phoenix.
Well, we'll get there, and I'm certainly not putting off talking about Phoenix, but yeah, I am. It's an anime overdose season for me. Every time the new anime come out, and spring anime just started, I make it my mission to watch as many episode ones as possible. I just love first episodes. Never know is it going to be great, is it going to be awful. Usually closer to awful than great, but you never know. So I've seen like 25 episode ones this season. I should probably clean the house at some point, but, you know, priorities.
What's your top three?
Well,
what are we checking out?
worth checking out. If you have Crunchyroll, the My Hero Academia Vigilantes is actually really good. I haven't read that manga. I'm not really into My Hero Academia, but the first episode of that, which is set like 10 years before the main story, about unlicensed heroes operating on street level, really good. So check that out.
So you don't need to know anything about the main series to appreciate it?
Not at all. It gives you the little intro, here's where the powers come from, and you're off. And some of the other main, like the teacher characters will show up in like cameos, at least in the first episode, but you don't need to know who they are. But people who have seen the main show will go, oh yeah, it's that guy.
Yeah.
Just thought, oh, it's, what's the microphone guy? Somebody Mike. You know what I mean. Now, if you don't subscribe to anime specialist streaming services, on Netflix, there's two pretty good ones. There's Witch Watch, which is like a cute fantasy anime thing. And then there's Yaiba Samurai Legend, which is, it's almost like a Dragon Ball, not Dragon Ball Z, like original Dragon Ball kind of look to it. If you liked Ranma 1/2, it has very much that feel. Check those two out. And if you're on Amazon Prime, there's a new Mobile Suit Gundam series that I don't quite understand because I haven't watched the 73 previous, and I don't think that's much of an exaggeration, previous Mobile Suit Gundam series, but looks really good. And
it's set in the same world with the same characters?
I read somewhere that it's set in there's a lot of alternate universes in Gundam, apparently.
Yeah.
And this is one where the other side won the big first war. So I think,
but it's Mobile Suit Gundam's universe.
Yes, it's one of the Mobile Suit Gundam universes.
Yeah, okay.
Name brand.
Because there's like Gundam Wing, and then there's like Mobile Suit Gundam.
It says Mobile Suit Gundam in the title, so I presume that's... And the rest, the full title is like Mobile Suit Gundam, and then that's QUUUUX.
Yeah.
I've heard people pronounce it as Quacks. I don't really get it. Maybe that means things to Gunpla fans, but I don't know. So anyway, folks, if you want to read all my 25-plus anime Episode 1 capsule reviews, number one, what's wrong with you? And number two, hey, join the Patreon, hang out with us in Slack, tell me my anime choices are crap. We'll have a good time. But enough about anime. We're here to talk X-Men. And not Phoenix right away. We'll get to it, Ruben. I know you can't wait to get to Phoenix. The big book this week is Uncanny X-Men number 13. We'll also take a slightly quicker peek at Storm number 7. And then, yes, we'll have the Adani arc come to its conclusion in Phoenix number 10.
Too soon.
Hashtag too soon, okay. But first, as is tradition, we will check in on the latest chapter of our Infinity comic.
Yeah.
And that is, where's my... Oh, I don't have a ding sound. I got to use...
Bing bang!
There we go. Close enough. Jim doesn't leave me the ding sound sometimes. I got to make do. But this one is Astonishing X-Men number 18, Controlled Demolition Part 6, which is, yes, the final chapter of this third arc. Written by Alex Pagnadel, art by Philip Sevi, colors by Michael Bartolo, letters by Clayton Cowles. So, Ruben, when we left off last week, our hulked-out, exploited proletarian dupe Nick, he had shown up at his kid Mia's school, demanded that they give him his daughter. And we don't know how that quite went down, but I guess they did, because maybe he had to sign a permission slip. He must have been on the list of people who could check out the kid. I don't know if he had ID with him in those torn Hulk pants, but he shows up holding Mia in his hands, and he leaps into the White Sox baseball stadium, which is called Rate Field.
Is that recognizable?
I don't know that stadium particularly. The name is correct. I'd have to. I presume that the scoreboard there looks very specific, so I presume that is drawn from reference. And Ruben, it was at this moment that I reminded myself, hey, doesn't Exceptional X-Men take place in Chicago? Mm-hmm. I can't remember. Did we bring up ever discussing this?
I definitely mentioned that because I was wondering if any of them would be aware of what's going on here.
I thought maybe we had. I couldn't tell for sure. But this is the time in this chapter when I thought, I wonder if they'll show up. And one of them will. So it seems that Nick thinks that he's having a special father-daughter day at the ballpark. Yeah. Mia doesn't recognize him until then she does recognize him. I really would have liked this recognition scene to be written a little bit better, right? There's no hook that makes her realize, oh, it's my dad. It just kind of happens. Yeah.
And it's kind of, I understand he's a Hulk, but how is this going to play out if there was actually a baseball game going on here? He lands in the middle of the field and then they get to just walk into the bleachers and sit down.
Yeah, clearly he has
I don't think it works that way.
2 brain cells left. He's not getting a lot of oxygen, as we'll get to very soon. And he must have some dream in his mind of, someday I'll take my kid to a ball game. I can go along with that. Also, she's the only other person around right now, so Mia has to be the one giving us the exposition, pointing out that her dad's neck muscles are getting so big that, they're cutting off his breathing, and that's not going to go anywhere good. So now, everybody else shows up. We get Banshee, Skin, and Husk, who ran into Nick at the construction site. I guess, did they just see him leap all the way here? Because I thought he had disappeared from the construction site. I don't know how they found their way to him at the stadium. That seems like it needs a little explanation, but here they are. Husk turns her skin into Colossus-style metal, which also seems to make her strong enough to punch the hulked-out Nick hard enough to make him bleed. Yeah. Is that how her power works? I thought it was literally skin deep, but it makes her strong too?
I don't know.
A lot of these powers, like Angelo, who's Skin, he also uses stretchy powers. I'm not really sure how stretchy he can be. He says he's not Reed Richards, but he kind of acts like Reed Richards. He's the one who first puts together that this is not just a stranger kidnapping. It's a father-daughter thing, and maybe the kid doesn't want to see her dad get beaten up. And then a whole lot happens at once. The army shows up. I don't know how they got those huge armored vehicles inside the baseball stadium. I don't think they have openings for that. Emma Frost shows up. We don't know how she knows how to be her either. Psychic stuff, I guess you could say. So she gets to be kind of the deus ex machina to end this story. She puts the soldiers and young Mia to sleep, tries to read Nick's hulked-out mind to figure out, hey, how'd he get this way? But she says, his mind is now just soup. And then the soup starts cooling rapidly because Nick also has passed on from this world, murdered to death by his own massive neck muscles. So be careful in the gym, folks. Don't get too swole. It could be working against you. So that does mean, Ruben, that you were right again.
Yeah, thank you.
That you had only once though, because you had I had tried to keep hope alive that maybe the gamma would wear off. Nick would be, older and wiser and learn a lesson from all this, but no, he's DEAD dead. Yeah. A victim of both the flat scanners and of his own foolishness. And I was kind of pleased that we don't get to see little Mia's reaction to her father's gruesome demise. It's not going to be a good scene when she wakes up, but she stays asleep, and then we just kind of leave the scene. We end with a couple brief epilogues. The mutant folks, Paige, Banshee, and Angelo, they head back to Cassidy Keep in Ireland. They say Emma was invited, but declined. Not really her scene. She has to stick around to be an exceptional.
Yeah.
Gateway, still there in Ireland on the lawn, either meditating or possibly napping. Hard to tell the difference. Skin, Angelo, he's going to stay here for a bit, and he even requests, maybe I should get a new costume. So do you think that he wants this to be like an official X-Men team now? Is that the implication?
Yeah, I think he thinks they are a team. I don't know if Sean is aware that he's forming an X-Men team. I didn't think that's what was going on here, but I guess so.
I guess so. We'll find out. And then in the other epilogue, this is really the most interesting bit of the chapter. We see that the head of the flat scanners, who we knew was Carl Denty, the executioner, he is not pleased with the outcome of Nick's story, right? He wanted there to be more fatalities, mass chaos.
Mm-hmm.
We see that he's on the phone with an accomplice. And Ruben, who is this accomplice?
Yeah, it's Cassandra Nova.
It is Charles Xavier's even more evil sister, a member of 3K, as seen in the pages of Jed MacKay's X-Men. Now, at the end of the first arc of Astonishing, we learned that Carl Denty was behind the flat scanners. At the end of the second arc, we learned that Cassandra Nova was behind that voice telling Black Tom to set fire to everything. And now here at the end of the third arc, we learn that the two of them are in cahoots. Just strange bedfellows, right? The executioner is all about killing all the mutants, and Cassandra Nova is kind of big on being a mutant. And I was wondering if, well, maybe he doesn't know who his partner is, but he calls her by name. So I am very curious to see how this partnership got started and what their mutual interest might be. Any guesses where that might go?
No, I'm not really sure where that's going. I do want to say, though, that I have been doing some research on Cassandra Nova.
Okay.
And just trying to refresh who she is. And I'm not sure she is as pro-mutant as you might think she is. So she's a Mumudrai, and you're going to get really annoyed when you hear what that is.
I'm cringing already. But is she a mutant? I thought she was.
She is technically, but basically she's like a astral plane parasite that that copied Xavier's DNA to create her body, but she's not. So she just happens to be a mutant because of who she copied, not necessarily because she's a mutant. Yeah.
Her core identity is almost kind of like a Shadow King situation, it sounds like.
Yeah, this is terrible. But so the Grant Morrison's idea is that there are these...
Of course it's Grant Morrison. Yeah.
Yes, these astral plane parasites that most people fight in the womb. And the one that she is just happened to be strong enough to survive. So she, used her genetic manipulating powers to create a body, and then Charles killed it, and then because she's really a spirit, not physical being, like the stillborn fetus was reconstructed into a body later.
And I presume that's part of the new X-Men Grant Morrison bit?
Yeah.
Well, okay, that doesn't explain why she's working with the Executioner, but it might, assuage my ideas of why they wouldn't work together. They're just... Is she just world domination? Is that kind of her thing, or does she have? I
think so. Yeah, she's just some evil generalist who wants to kill a bunch of things. But she's not pro-mutant, which is why I'm fine with her working with these random people.
Like an old school Magneto kind of mutant. She's
yeah. It does make me think. I don't really understand why she was on Krakoa now that I'm refreshed on that. Right? They had some weird people that they gave amnesty to.
I don't remember her being part of that.
She was part of, what was it? The Marauders. After we stopped reading Marauders, they had her join that team.
That's why I don't remember it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that might be quietly forgotten about. Or maybe it'll be tied into this story, or maybe not. I guess we'll find out.
Supposedly, Steve Orlando had her left in the distant past, so I don't know how she got back to the present. But
it was part of that whole story about here's really where mutants come from, right? Yes. One of the 17 different origins.
When he was
of
when he was let me show you the pre-Iraqi mutants, and I was like, that is some. Yes.
Well, let's hope it doesn't tie in too tightly, because I don't want to have to go back and read that, but I will if I have to.
Yeah.
Well, looking forward in this Infinity comic, if the pattern holds, the Infinity comic will take next week off. That's what is done between arcs. And then, again, if the pattern holds, the next arc will be written by Tim Seeley. The preview panel says, next, I have seen tomorrow, with a close-up image of Gateway's serene face. So, Ruben, we had kind of pitched last week, wouldn't it be great to have a Gateway series? Are we going to get a Gateway arc of Astonishing X-Men?
Yeah.
I hope so. That would be amazing. I'm really rooting for that. Could be fun.
I'm going to call them Gateway and the Astonishing X-Men.
Gateway with the Astonishing X-Men.
Yes.
Okay, Gateway's X-Men. We'll workshop the title. The Amazing Gateway, Gateway the Great. Okay, we'll work on that offline.
We can definitely. Yes.
There's something there for sure. But first, should we score this arc of the Infinity comic? I think that's what we've been doing. We've been scoring entire arcs.
Yeah, we can score it. I'm going to be kind of down on this one. I thought this was a nothing story. It was like too contrived. And I mean, it was nice to see some characters, but I was just kind of like, meh, I could flush this one down the toilet. So I'll just give it a 6.
A 6, okay. I'm going to be a little nicer to it. I think I'm grading on a curve with it being an Infinity comic meant to read on your phone while you're standing in line.
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct that some things just happened way too coincidentally. Like Emma Frost being the key to ending the whole story when she was never in it. There was no hints about Emma before this. She just shows up, Deus Ex Machina, it's done.
That kid's not going to like Emma because she was like, can you help my dad? And Emma's like, oh yeah, I'll do that. And then puts her to sleep. And then
Emma's going to just erase the memories, blank her mind, give her a whole new identity.
Yeah.
She's going to be the next new character in Exceptional, possibly. Who knows? Yeah. But yeah, I thought it was kind of fun. I'm really curious. I'm giving a little bit of bonus for that ending with Cassandra Nova and the Executioner. Although maybe after you tell me about Cassandra, maybe I should take some of that back. But I'm going to give this a flat 7. I think it's worth reading. It's not worth subscribing, of course, to Marvel Unlimited just for this. But if you've got Marvel Unlimited and you like X-Men books, there's no reason not to read this. It's perfectly okay, kind of fun to read books in a different format. So that's why I gave it a 7. Okay, that is the end of that. And now I'm definitely not wasting time looking for where that drop is.
Bing bang.
There we go. Next, we're going on to Uncanny X-Men number 13, The Dark Artery, Part 1, Machinations, if I'm saying that correctly, of Dread. Written by Gail Simone, art by David Marquez, colors by Matthew Wilson, letters by Clayton Cowles. Okay, so this arc has the Outlier kids as main protagonists, but it's more about history. History of mutants in the 616 America, speaking of mutants in history, the history of Haven House, and maybe also about the history of Gambit. So there are 3 interwoven strands of this issue. One's an adventure story with Gambit, another is the Outliers investigating a mysterious structure, and the third being a historical tale set around, 1910, 1920 or so. In classic Weird Dose of X fashion, we're going to rip the issue apart and take them on one at a time. So let's start with Gambit. That's the most superhero-y of the strands here.
Mm-hmm.
He wakes up early when everyone else is asleep, and he gets like a mental text message from a dragon right outside Haven House. This is, of course, Saturong, last seen in issue 1 of this series. Saturong looks different now, pale blue, more pointy, less flowery. In issue 1, after that fight, Gambit himself suggested that Saturong go to Antarctica as a place the dragon might find more restful. And the dragon said, hey, it'll be nice to be an ice drake again. So that's kind of neat. We see that he did do exactly that. He went off to Antarctica, and I guess this kind of dragon, almost like a chameleon, it changes form in a bit to match its environment, at least its long-term environment, so he's now an ice dragon.
Yeah.
Also, I didn't get this the first time through, but when Gambit wakes up, Rogue says that she's cold and wants another blanket. Do you think that that's ice from Saturong making her feel cold? Was that supposed to be foreshadowing?
That's interesting. It'd be weird to foreshadow something that you have no insight into, right? Like, why would we think Saturong's a cold caster? It seemed to, he was saying stuff about that's just how she is.
Yeah, that's what Gambit's narration said, but just to see cold in that first panel and then an ice dragon, I thought maybe we're supposed to be lame. Could be either way.
I'll tell you what, this is not going to ruin my score, but I was just like, this is really bizarre.
Oh.
So he runs out and he's in his jammies, right? I guess he sort of has a blanket or something.
He's got like boxer briefs on and like a blanket around his shoulders.
Yeah. And so I guess he thinks the dragon's a threat and he starts doing some card stuff, right?
Yeah.
Where did those cards come from?
Well, I guess when you're Gambit, you have an extra pocket sewn into all your underwear.
Yeah, we just got a pack of cards.
A deck of cards.
Yeah, it's a pretty tight pair of pants, right? I was like, this is Gail Simone giving some cheesecake to Gambit fans.
Yeah.
And then he's just got the cards. So it's just like, where are these cards?
I guess it's like his
stashed?
version of sleeping with like a gun or a knife strapped to his ankle. He just needs a deck of cards in his underwear.
Yeah.
Or maybe he's just happy to, that's not even complete that sentence.
He just puts them in the front for some extra padding.
That's anatomically, that seems uncomfortable, but
yes.
I don't know. I'm not Cajun. Maybe it's a Cajun thing. So Saturang, the dragon's here. He has magical olfactory abilities, and he can smell the recent presence of a giant mystical razor bill with a Latverian accent.
Yeah, well, that's cool crossover.
Very specific.
Yeah.
A reference, of course, to that bird that brought Storm to Latveria.
Yep.
Now, Ruben, I had called that bird a giant magical guillemot, and here they call it a razor bill. Now, I could argue that the bill shape was not, that's a different podcast. They're closely related. I think it's kind of in between. Tough call.
Is this a bird thing? I'm not following.
Very much a bird thing, yeah. They're both auks or alcids. They're kind of the northern hemisphere version of penguins. Okay. Two different closely related varieties. Yeah. Razor bill. I'll go with razor bill.
I would write a strongly worded letter to
Dear editor. I carbon copied to the Audubon people, bring everybody in. Sure. Yep. So anyway, Sadarang's not here to talk about Alcids. He's here to talk to Gambit about that Eye of Agamotto that Gambit took away from it. Mm-hmm. Now, Ruben, it seems to me they could have this conversation right here on the lawn, couldn't they?
Oh yeah, for sure.
But that's not what happens. Instead, I think we just need to have a fight in this issue because it's an X-Men comic.
Yeah.
So that's why Gail Simone has the dragon take Gambit off on an adventure. Savage Land, Antarctica. They fight like a couple of T-Rex looking dinosaurs, which is fine. Gambit tries to just scare the T-Rex away, ends up having to blow off its head instead. And throughout, Gambit's narration boxes have him reflecting on being a mutant, having creepy eyes, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Eventually he decides, it's a good thing I'm a mutant. I got to be somebody kind of special rather than just some schmuck working for like the Vig, that Killer Croc looking guy.
Yeah.
Which the idea of mutant identity is going to be big in the other parts of the story as well. So that's the only bit that really ties this in with the rest of it. And it kind of ties in with Phoenix a little bit too. And we'll talk about that later. Okay, now they finally get to the conversation they should have had back in Louisiana. Sadarang, he was supposed to have to wait a year to get the eye back. And that year is clearly not yet up. But now the dragon says, no, you should give me the eye back for your own benefit, Gambit. Because the eye grants power, but as always, that power comes with some side effects. Sadarang says that Gambit will start to crave power and then flesh. First, live animals, not in a sexy way, Ruben. Mind your business. Live animals, hope not in a sexy way. Then friends, family, and finally even his wife. So, Ruben, do you think Sadarang is telling the truth here, or do you think the dragon just wants his damn eye back and he's making shit up? I could go either way on this.
I think he's told the truth, but I like the idea that he's lying. That's hilarious.
I think for story purposes, as people who have read comics before, he's probably telling the truth.
Yeah.
But I think it would be a funny twist for it to be, haha, I was just making it up. I got my eye back.
I definitely laughed at the whole, like, this is going to turn you into a zombie, side story where it's like, of course it is.
Lots of zombies.
Why is this eye so problematic, right? Isn't this just like a duplicate of...
Well, there's two eyes. This is the left eye of Agamotto, which is
I think
also called the Eye of Power. And maybe, like, if you're the Sorcerer Supreme, you have wards and protections and can, keep this from taking over. Probably if you're a dragon, you can keep it from completely taking over, too.
Yeah.
But
I know he's got, like, Strange has got, like, a brother that's, like, a vampire or something, right?
Oh, yeah. He was in a mirror world for a while.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So, could be related. So, that was Gambit's story. Next, let's check in with the Outliers. Death Dream, he's kind of the leader in this part. He's hearing something calling out to him. He says it's a highway of pain, which is not one of my favorite rock songs from the 80s. And he says it's calling out specifically to the Outliers. So he wakes up the other three. There's some jokes about sleeping in your underwear. Is it weird that Ransom is sleeping in his underwear? It's Louisiana. It must be hot as balls, right? Isn't it always 130% humidity?
Yeah.
I guess
probably
not if
your
rogue is cold, but what? Sorry, what was that, Ruben?
I said it's probably just what you do in Louisiana, sleep in your underwear.
I would imagine so, but Calico, I guess she's very innocent.
Too. Yeah.
I'm not sure I buy her characterization in this chapter because she goes back and forth from being almost like simple to just knowing stuff out of nowhere. You could write this off as she's had a weird childhood, very sheltered, but she jokes about the underwear thing, and then again later she'll recognize, oh, obsidian doesn't come from swamps, which I guess she's right. It's a volcanic rock, but maybe she's good at the book learning, but doesn't have people skills. We'll have to go with that. So all the others pretty much just go along with what their creepy friend says, and they go out into the swamp. One odd bit, Ransom asks, hey, why is there ice everywhere on the ground? Now, Ruben, I'm looking at the art here. It shows no ice. So I'm not sure what's going on here. Again, I think this might also be the two possibilities. Either part of this whole thing that Death Dream is seeing, or the ice dragon left some ice behind and the artist forgot to include it, or this dialogue might have been tweaked at the end. Yeah. I think it's another ice dragon thing. I think both those cold references are supposed to be ice dragon things.
Yeah, just to let you know that's all kind of taking place at the same location.
Yeah, tie the different stories together a little bit, because otherwise they're basically three separate issues. And I think that's where, if you read Sus Gabe's written review, he didn't like this issue pretty much at all. He thought that nothing really happened. There was only the beginnings of stories.
Yeah.
And he has a point, but I think I enjoy the stories a little more than he did. But we'll get to the scores at the end.
I don't know why, but Death Dream he annoys the hell out of me. He's so obnoxious, this character. I mean, he's a good character because he's so obnoxious, but consistently obnoxious, but I don't know.
He's more focused in this story, which might make sense if he has this mission calling to him, but he's definitely less just, he's not given the random funny lines here. He's busy, he's doing stuff.
I guess people are willing to go along with him, though, which is, I would not be going along with the guys this creepy.
But we still don't know their history as a group, right? They were literally all over the world, and then they show up together in Louisiana. I'm still waiting to find out that backstory in between, because maybe that would explain why they trust him. Another funny bit here is that, did you see who else gets in the rowboat with them?
Oh, Ember.
Ember the horse gets in the rowboat. There's a panel that kind of looks like Washington crossing the Delaware. Kind of funny. Now, more evidence here that, as if we didn't really know, Ember's not really a horse. A horse that size and a rowboat that small would not work out well. I'm no nautical engineer, but I can see the physics do not work here. Rowboat doesn't sink. Instead, Death Dream leads the group to a huge, creepy stone sculpture out in the swamp. And he says, this is what's calling. This is the Dark Artery, which, hey, that's the title of the arc.
I noticed that.
I like it because, some of these arcs, I'm like, what is that referring to? Here it is. Thank you, Gail Simone. We get it. The sculpture here is naturally shaped like an X. And Calico, again, here's where she identifies it as obsidian, volcanic glass. Later, she's also the one to say, hey, the extensive underground passageways and rooms here under the structure, very much like a Dungeons and Dragons map, doesn't really make sense in a swamp, which she's right there, because I don't think they even have like basements in Louisiana, because it would just fill with water.
Yeah.
So something creepy, uncanny even might be going on there.
God.
That's not even in my notes. I just made that up. I did it. Yay. Oh, okay. So the kids, they descend into the structure. The very creepy staircase, torches lighting the way that Death Dream says have been burning for 300 years. I keep waiting to hear roll for initiative and have the orcs come out and attack, because it's so Dungeons and Dragons, but not yet. The bottom of the first long staircase, they find a room that Death Dream calls the alcove. And here we see 11 stone coffins arranged in a circle, and also the inscription on the wall. I'm going to try it, Ruben. Affer nobis tuos ut in aeternum requisiant, which Jitter, who can briefly become a world-class linguistic scholar, which is probably overkill for a Latin inscription, but why not? She translates accurately as, bring us your own to rest forever. There's a circular table in the middle of the ring of coffins, and on that table is a book, the diary of a woman named Henrietta Benjamin, who will come up again later on. Death Dream says, we're not done yet. We need to descend even further. And oh, by the way, all along this whole trip, he's been telling all the kids, the outlier kids, do not fear. Do not fear. Be relevant for the cliffhanger. As they go down further, there are actual dead bodies just tucked into alcoves off the main hallway, and the final page splash reveals the guardian of this place, who is the Man-Thing. And you don't want to be afraid around this guy because, of course, whosoever knows fear burns at the touch of the Man-Thing. That's his whole shtick. Odd choice here. I did not expect Man-Thing to show up, right? We'd seen him not so long ago in X-Force. He generally hangs out in the Florida Everglades, which I guess is kind of just across the Gulf from Louisiana. Maybe he can commute. Now, this location, everything about this location seems deeply tied to mutants as mutants.
Yeah.
And the Man-Thing is not really a mutant-related character, so I'm curious to see where this is going. It seems out of place, a different part of the Marvel universe kind of poking into the mutant world.
Yeah.
And I want to know what Gail Simone's plan is.
I do like the art here. This Man-Thing looks really formidable and hulking, which is not always the case.
He's a spooky Man-Thing.
Yep.
Okay, third and final strand of the story. We jump back in time to meet Henrietta Benjamin, the owner of that diary that the kids found, and her narration boxes are excerpts from that diary. I kind of like that. I like when narration boxes have a source that's not just thought bubbles that the author didn't want to make into thought bubbles. We're in Chicago, but it's not. It's a lot of Chicago lately. We're going to leave Chicago, though, so Emma's not going to show up. And we're around 1915, 1920. Some people on the House to Astonish blog Googled some of the terms she uses about the Chicago elevated railways and the trust that owns them. So we must be like 1915-ish at the earliest.
Mm-hmm.
Henrietta is a relatively young school teacher. She's also a black woman. And we find out later that she's also a mutant. So overlapping levels and types of identity in play here. So kind of the mutant metaphor being made a little less metaphorical. She's been living in a, quote, boarding house for colored people, that's what it's called, for some time. And she says that she's never in her entire life been more than 3 miles from this spot. That's not very far, Ruben. You know, I sometimes go for a walk further than that. So I know that people that time didn't travel so much, but
yeah,
that's tightly constrained.
Mm-hmm.
But now she's going to travel by train to Louisiana to bring what we're supposed to, I guess, gather are like the ashes of her mother to the artery. So very much connected to the Outlier story. Maybe one of those coffins is her mother's coffin. Maybe it's somewhere else, but definitely connected there. We see her carve a pair of symbols into the boarding house sign, an arrow and then a stylized letter M. Reminiscent of, I've seen things called hobo codes where, you know, hobos back in the day would indicate where kind people were, where the police were real mean. So it's supposed to be reminiscent of that. We also see someone flash the Midnight M hand gesture. Now, I've been asking questions about this, how new it is, why we haven't seen it before, but this is confirmation that long before the fall of Krakoa, this has been a thing, all the way back to 1915-ish, like 100 years.
Yeah, which is really weird since it was introduced in 2024.
It's one of those things with long-running comics when you want to create a new thing and say it's always been around.
Yeah.
Do you try to explain why we haven't seen it on panel for 6 decades of comics?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's fine.
They don't need to.
They've done a good job of making it a part of the lore now. I kind of like it.
Yeah, it could be an old-fashioned thing that got revived after Krakoa.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely okay with that, but I am happy to see, I'm interested to see that it was, now it's definite, it's not new, it's an old thing that anybody could have dug up and learned about.
Yeah.
So we see Henrietta face discrimination along the way, first for being black, being excluded from, you know, the better facilities in the train station, not having restrooms to use, that sort of thing. And then in Louisiana, she gets discriminated against for suspicion of being a mutant.
Mm-hmm.
We have a guy named Jacob Miller here. He wears an S-shaped badge, works for something called the Service. I think we're supposed to be thinking of S for Sentinels here, just basically people who are out to get mutants.
Mm-hmm.
He saw that Midnight M sign that someone directed towards Harriet, and even though she was smart to not react, he stops and searches her, spills her stuff all over the ground, almost spills Mom all over the ground. Kind of gross. Luckily, he doesn't take the diary because that would give away everything. Lots of incriminating evidence. And clearly, he's being set up as an antagonist be back in further installments of this arc.
When do you think he noticed the Midnight M being flashed? Was the person like still following her, keep flashing it at her? Because he certainly wasn't on the car, right, with her?
I don't know. Maybe he did ride down with her. Maybe he was on the train.
The person that was like flashing it just is like flashing it at everybody. Just walking around.
The person was flashing it in the waiting room somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
So he could have been there, or maybe he has an informant who saw it.
I'll go with the informant.
As Miller leaves, we end on a close-up of Henrietta's face, and we see her eye glowing red. So, Ruben, are we going to find out that Henrietta is one of Gambit's ancestors? Is that what we set up for?
Gotta be what they're going with, right?
I guess so. I mean, Gambit has a mysterious past. You know, in the South, people have mixed ancestry of all different types, so why not? Could be interesting. So yeah, I thought this was a pretty decent start to a new arc. None of our 3 strands go very far, but we have 22 pages to work with. You know, do the math, that's like 7 1/3 pages per story. So I think that Gail Simone and artist David Marquez did enough to make me interested in all 3 stories. A little less for Gambit. Again, that seemed like action for the sake of we have to have action, but the idea of the eye is good enough. Doesn't seem like we'll be learning more of that outlier backstory quite yet, right? I harp on this all the time. I want to know how they got together, how they got to Louisiana. We're going to find more out, though, about historical practices of American mutants in the early part of the 20th century, which sounds like a title of a thesis, but also could be a fun comic book. We know that the origin of mutants originally, they didn't appear until after the nuclear experiments in the 60s and 50s, maybe. But Marvel's messed with that timeline so much that, sure, American mutants in the 1915 time period, why not?
Yeah, I mean, we just had the Iraqi, right, mentioned, so it wouldn't shock me that, pockets of mutants were around.
Certainly could be. So yeah, the issue had a lot to do, not a lot of pages to do it in. I could have done without some of that Gambit stuff. Maybe make that just 3 pages on the lawn of the house there in Louisiana, Haven House. Yeah. Give some extra pages to the other stories, but it's fine.
This definitely felt like a mandate of like, oh, you got to have some kind of fight, and that's the only reason they were in the Savage Land.
It does. I mean, it does give a way for there to be some more colorful stuff going on. I do like that all 3 of the stories look visually distinct. That's very neat. So you can always just look at one panel and you know which story you're in, even though we had only one artist, one colorist. I think it's good to distinguish that way. I enjoyed that a lot.
My other thought on that one was, though, maybe Gail did that as like kind of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge to like the Rogue in the Savage Land series that was happening.
That's pretty interesting. I like that. Yeah, because I mean, Rogue in the Savage Land, mostly people are talking about the covers, which shows Rogue wearing not much clothing in the Savage Land
outfit. Yeah.
So we get Gambit in his underwear fighting dragons in the Savage Land. That's a pretty good call. I like that. So to score this, I don't think it's quite enough here for me to give it the 8. Right, that's like our standard of like actually good. Recommend this comic. We have it's like an appetizer sampler, right? A little bit of this story, a little bit of that story. It's not really a full meal yet, but I'm going to give it just under, so 7.8 out of 10. And this story could wind up being an 8-level story, but right now we're just kind of hinting at it. So 7-8. How about you?
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. I don't know, like 7.5, 7.8. Like, what's the difference? I was just going to give it a 7.5, but for exactly the same reasons.
The difference is 0.3. That's what it is. Don't ask a math teacher a question like that. Come on. Okay, that is that for Uncanny, and now we're going to move on.
Bing bang
to Storm number 7, Legacy number 18, Serpents, Salamanders, and Storm Gods. It is written by Marewa Ayodele, art by Luciano Vecchio, colors by Alex Guimaraes and Fer Cifuentes Sujo. Now, I think we gotta give, letters by Travis Lanham, but I think we gotta give Storm the prize for the most difficult to pronounce set of creatives, at least for a white guy from New Jersey. Because that collection of names from around the world, I've been working on them, but I'm sure I messed at least one of them up. So, Ruben, I still want to know what's up with the Storm Sanctuary. Where did it come from? Who built the damn thing? Where do those kaiju mech robot engines come from? Marewa Ayodele is not interested in giving me those answers. Not at all. That's not what he's here about. Maybe eventually, but he has other fish to fry. Instead, first we get a Silver Surfer scene with just the most barely tenuous connection to anything else we know about. And then we get to follow Storm on an unofficial mission from Tony Stark. So let's start with that Silver Surfer scene. This scene feels very Donny Cates to me. We get references to things that are in some of his books. We're told that the place we're in is, quote, the far reaches of the universe, and that the time is the near future. So incredibly vague. We appear to be witnessing the aftermath of a great battle, with the Surfer being the only one left standing. We get 2 extreme close-ups of fallen figures. First one wearing Asgardian-looking armor. Now, Ruben, you think you know who this might be?
I don't think that's overselling it, but
I didn't know who it was, so I asked you on the Slack, and you had a theory at least.
Yeah, I thought it might be Beta Ray Bill. And the reason for that is it's definitely Asgardian. You see like kind of the ringlets that you see on Thor's uniform.
Yeah, that circle motif. Then
you kind of see some like weird facial stuff, like an ear or something of the fallen figure. And I was like, that doesn't look humanoid. It looks kind of
that's an interesting
creature-esque.
Call. I know Beta Ray Bill has some fans, so to see him dead like this, if that is him, would be kind of a big deal if that is what is revealed.
Yeah, and even the subtitle is like something about in the far reaches, and I was like, okay, well he's kind of not in the near Earth.
Yep, that makes sense. It would fit the milieu.
Yeah.
The second figure, we see some red chains, and we see like a skull on his chest. So this has got to be the Cosmic Ghost Rider version of Frank Castle. Yeah. That's pretty clear.
Interestingly,
both of these characters look pretty dead. Go ahead.
After we talked, I'm going to tell you, I ran the image through ChatGPT.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, tell me what you think this character is. And it speculated that it was John Ironfire, which I was like, what? And then it went off on telling me about how the armor looked like Iraqi. And it gave me a few other Iraqi characters that it could be. Huh. And then said, hey, Storm, her connection to like the Regency of Mars would connect to that. And I was like, okay, this is a really wild speculation. So
that's out of left field. That would be different. Yeah. It does looks more Asgardian to me, but if it's revealed to be that, then I guess we'd have to hand it to ChatGPT. Just turn it over to PodGPT and we can just take our Mondays off.
Yep.
So when the Surfer picks up a sword, it's the Twilight Sword, which is from Surtur, right? The flame giant from Muspelheim. So that was my original thought for who that first fallen figure might be, but it doesn't really look like Surtur. It looks more like an Asgardian. But it is Surtur's sword, and he says to whomever, "You have fought well. Please allow me to borrow your weapon, to borrow your strength, and add it to mine." So either Surtur was part of this fight, or one of the other people fighting had previously taken the sword from Surtur. Yeah. Who knows? So he takes that sword, stabs it into his surfboard, and this, we're told, adds the power of the Twilight Sword to the Surfer's existing power cosmic. Whatever that means. All our cosmic characters are getting more extra powerful, and I never know what it means. It does turn the Silver Surfer from silver to like a purplish black. Yeah. And he says he's now the Silver Surfer Soot. That's S-O-O-T, as in ashes, soot.
Yeah.
Not the best name ever, Mr. Iodele. I don't know. Silver Surfer Soot doesn't. That's not going to go down in history.
No.
But
he looks cool though.
He does look cool. He looks
now he like has a. He doesn't pass the California emissions test anymore.
No, go to Midas. Yeah. Now he does remind me of a Donny Cates book that was called Silver Surfer Black. Came out a few years ago, and that he turned black, like was losing power. So it's like the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
Here we're told that in this time and place, the Silver Surfer is working for Galactus, who is called here the Devourer of Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Is that Galactus's current status quo? Is he back to devouring?
I don't know. Wasn't he?
The last I know about Galactus was the end of Dan Slott's Fantastic Four that I reviewed with Jim on the main Marvel podcast, and end of the Reckoning War. Galactus had been cured of his hunger.
Okay.
Now, I know he always goes back and forth, good Galactus, bad Galactus, so I guess somehow he got reset again, but we don't know how.
Is this what you're talking about when he was like the Lifebringer?
After that. That was one of the times he was flipped. I think it's been multiple
times. He was Lifebringer, and then he had to give up the Lifebringer thing to fight some big bad. But then I guess he got cured again.
Yeah, that was in the Reckoning War.
Okay. He got hungry, man.
You get a little peckish, right? Maybe
eat a snack. If I eat a snack, I'm not cured of my hunger. About 2 hours later, I'm
had a little cosmic weed, and you get a little snacky, and one thing leads to another. Who knows? It's legal now, I hear. You can go to a cosmic dispensary in Space Vegas.
Yes.
So we're told also that Galactus himself answers to the Black Winter, another Donny Cates character or concept. And the Black Winter, we're told, is one of the Enders, capital E Enders, that devour not just individual planets like Galactus, but entire universes. And finally, we're reminded that several times in the past, Enders have tried to consume the 616, but that these Enders were defeated and killed by Oblivion. Okay, so there's our link. We're finally getting like one word that connects this story or this scene to anything we've seen before in the Storm title. Storm now works for Eternity. At some point, she's going to have to face off with Oblivion. Maybe the Silver Surfer is going to be the avatar of Oblivion? I don't know. Maybe. Are these
pictures, these sequential pictures, supposed to be showing you increasingly larger beings? Because is it like Galactus and he's small compared to the Ender, and then the next scene is the Ender and it's like inside the mouth of Oblivion? Is that?
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be like, I don't know. When I was in school many years ago, there was that Powers of 10 video we watched every year that showed every scene was like 10 times bigger than the other, and you went from like human scale up to cosmic scale and then zoomed all the way down to molecular scale. I think that's what's going on here. We're just supposed to, this is just how big the Black Winter is by going from Silver Surfer to Galactus to the Black Winter. Well, that is the end of that scene, and it's not referenced anywhere else in the book. Clearly, it's going to come up again in another issue or two, but that's just a prelude. On to Storm. So, Tony Stark shows up at the Fortress of Stormitude and asks Storm to help him out. Tells her it's not an official Avengers mission. I'm not going to tell you who the mission is for, and if you, Storm, tell anyone about it, I'm going to publish your browser history and maybe your pal Maggots as well. So, Ruben, why does Storm, Queen of Mars, Goddess, Avatar of Eternity itself, why does she accept Tony Stark's pissant mission?
I can't recall. It's been a while since I read this. Lay it on me.
It doesn't say.
Okay.
I'm legitimately
Doesn't she have she has a conversation with a Maggot, and it's something about like rescuing or retrieving a body, and for some reason she really felt compelled to do that.
Yeah, but I don't understand her power scale level here. She's super duper cosmic, and yet she's also working for the Avengers, and she's doing these low level missions. She doesn't even know who she's working for. I don't understand who she is right now. I don't understand.
Let's just say she's got an extremely sus search history, and that was an extremely effective.
Oh, I don't want to make up one thing she might have been. Anything she might be searched for. My brain is making things up that I'm not going to say out loud. That's fine.
I actually thought this was like pretty bad character assassination on Tony Stark. I mean, I like. Let me say this. I like this issue in general, but I was like, okay, he's like going to her house to like impress his dates.
Yeah, he's like, treated as very much a jerk here.
He's kind of a scumbag.
He's clearly being used as, a foil. So Aurora Storm is this great, majestic, serene person, and he's this just kind of sleazy scumbag. So
and then
the contrast is supposed to be there.
And she's like, I'm going to go back to bed. And she's like, yes, I have a real bed. I don't just float there. And then he's like, that's not what T'Challa told us. So I'm like, what? Like also, T'Challa and Tony are just like chatting about their love conquests and
in the Avengers locker room.
Yeah. I was like, this is weird. I don't feel like that would be a thing, but.
And when Storm descends the staircase and sees Tony there waiting for her, the art shows her clapping twice. And my joke in Slack was, is that how she turns the lights on and off in the sanctuary? Yeah. She just got the clapper.
Yeah, that's what I thought was going on.
She's There's like, no other reason for her to clap.
And then she's like, oh, it's Tony, clap off.
It's not even, I guess it's supposed to be like a sarcastic, slow clap kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But in context, it doesn't work as that. So I don't
Even
know.
if it's a sarcastic, slow clap, like why? It's like she sees somebody in her house. She's like, good job, you broke in? I don't know.
Doesn't work. But she accepts the mission, is the thing. Mm-hmm. And the background of the mission is that some scientists in Brazil were working to recreate the Captain America Super Soldier Serum. Already kind of sketchy, right? Mm-hmm. Anytime they try to recreate that serum in the Marvel Universe, it's not a good idea. Never works out well. Samples of this were being transported by helicopter over the Amazon rainforest. This helicopter gets struck by lightning, yada yada. There's now a dead person in the forest and a super soldierized anaconda wreaking havoc in the Amazon. I had a cut. What was it? Here goes.
Who ordered the steak?
It didn't actually say who ordered the snake, but I thought it was close enough. Who ordered the snake?
Who ordered the steak?
There we go. We do get, also there's these weather anomalies going on. The lightning won't stop happening. We get one panel of Stark, Reed Richards, who's, I don't think he's even on the Avengers, and T'Challa trying to fight the lightning, which is not my favorite Metallica album. Why are they
Is this
fighting
more like
lightning?
Illuminati? Is this like an Illuminati team?
Oh, I guess. I guess that's the connection between the three of them.
Yeah.
But T'Challa is like shooting lasers at the lightning.
I don't think it works.
I don't think it works that way, T'Challa. Call your sister. She's the science one, right? That doesn't work. I don't know. And for some reason, they can't stop the lightning.
That's why the people are running like crazy. It's not the lightning. It's T'Challa just shooting wildly.
Reed Richards is trying to stretch, and like that's going to stop the lightning. I don't know what he's doing. So they've tried nothing, and it hasn't worked. So Storm, they figure, call in the Storm Goddess. Why not? Couldn't be any less useful.
Yeah.
That Storm accepts the mission, heads to the Amazon, taking Ultimate Maggot along with her.
Mm-hmm.
What
Omega
Maggot.
Omega Maggot. Let's use the name correctly.
It is more fun to say Omega Maggot. That's kind of cool. They do find the snake. Not hard to find. It's not small.
Yeah.
She fights it. She zaps the entire thing to ashes with a way oversized lightning bolt. Cremates the body of the poor guy inside. And this is when Maggot says, hey, weren't we supposed to retrieve the guy's body? But no open casket for his family. Not going to work out so well.
Yeah.
And now we get another fight. This one, Storm versus other Storm gods. And we have been seeing hints, usually like from the writer outside of the book, saying, I'm going to have all the Storm gods fight. These Storm gods are, and again, apologies for this pronunciation.
Can I make one more quick joke?
Please.
I love this part when she kind of figures that something is not right. Because she's like, you kept up with my speed and you're not out of breath. Because Maggot, just notoriously out of shape.
Again, this must be trying to remind us that he's now Omega Maggot, that he's keeping up. But he's really only here. He doesn't do much except make Storm look powerful by comparison, because he kind of gets beat up by these guys who are Mama Ragan, who rides a lizard named Epelia. Mm-hmm. Mama Ragan comes from Australian mythology. We have Sango. He's from the Yoruba people of Africa. He has made a few Marvel appearances before, so he's not a brand new character. He's been in Thor.
Yeah.
We have Susanoo, who is a Shinto god from Japan, and Chak, a Mayan storm god. So that'd be like Mexico-ish, so he's at least the closest to his home territory. Yeah. But these aren't like all Amazonian gods. They're from all around the world.
Yeah. I mean, Susanoo was in big trouble, was it Little China?
Oh, I haven't seen that. Was he?
I don't think so, really, but he looks like it.
Oh, okay.
Or you could do Raiden. Take your pick.
Now, Storm decides that a fight between gods is no place even for Omega Maggot. So it kind of looks like she makes a version of Spider-Man webbing out of the air. Yeah. She grabs Maggot with it, spins him around in a circle, and slings him right out of the issue.
Yeah.
We don't see him again. We don't know how far he went. As he flies off the page, Storm says, "You know what to do."
I'm pretty sure he doesn't. She just killed him.
he hits a tree like 2 inches off panel and just splats. Now, with Maggot gone, R.I.P. Maggot, maybe, Storm, being super duper strong, is able to fight off all 4 of these gods using a magical spell that conjures a giant octopus. And this is a cool looking bit of art. We've seen her use a spell before that has this black and white patchwork look to it. Mm-hmm. I couldn't find it immediately. Do you remember where we've seen it? I know we've seen this before.
Oh, her using spells?
Yeah, wasn't it like when she was traveling and she fell and was found by Dr. Voodoo?
Yeah,
wasn't that when she used a spell like this?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's emphasizing that Storm has not just god powers and mutant powers, but also she's like a descendant of Agamotto, and she has magic powers too.
Yeah.
And then I think Storm teleports herself away in a bolt of lightning.
Yeah.
Is that a thing she can do now? That's new, right?
Yeah, it's pretty badass, but definitely not Storm that we know, right? I don't remember her, like, it's kind of like a Mega Man thing, right? Like, she zips up and disappears.
But she's still in control of herself. She's not totally taken, right? The speech bubbles haven't changed. She's not talking like Eternity. Her eyes have gone full white, but I don't know what state she's in here.
I'm going to just say, like, they talk about her using spells, right? Maybe it's just some spell that she cast that lets her do this.
I guess, but it seems so closely tied in with her storm powers that I don't know.
Yeah. She also gets a haircut. That's a real important part.
Yeah, she's grabbed by the hair by one of the other gods, and she cuts her hair off.
Yeah.
That's new hair.
So now it's,
slightly shorter. We don't know why these gods are fighting. They don't say, they say a few words, but nothing that says, here's our beef with you. Here's why we're going to try to kick your ass. Here's why we're working together.
Yeah.
So we don't know what's up with that. And then she's back at the Fortress of Stormitude after teleporting away. And another storm god shows up for the very end, and that is, of course, Thor, who does his whole I say thee nay situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ruben, this book is getting a little too silly for me. Storm can do anything. Nothing's really explained.
Yeah.
Not quite as bad as the book we're going to talk about next, but going in that same direction.
Mm-hmm.
Call me crazy, but when I see Storm get supercharged by Eternity, I want to see that plot thread play out right away, right? I'm okay with, like in Jed McKay's X-Men, some things get backburnered and 8 issues later they come back, but Storm being as powerful as an avatar of Eternity, that kind of has to be resolved right now, because otherwise she's so powerful that it kind of breaks the character. And I'm afraid that's what's happening in this volume, is that Storm is just so powerful that she doesn't work anymore as a character. Are you concerned about that too, or am I being too fraidy cat here?
I'm willing to probably give it till about issue 10 before I feel that way. I mean, I need her to be super powerful. She's going to be fighting a bunch of gods. But, and in this one, I feel like I still understand what she's doing, right? Like, she's using her storm powers, plus maybe a little bit of magic. But I can understand what's going on in the scene, so it doesn't bother me as much as when we get to the next book. But it's for, long term, like, do I want this to be the status quo for Storm? No, I do not. I need her to be just a human with the ability to control weather.
Which seems plenty powerful enough, right? An Omega mutant. We don't need to go bigger than that. So, yeah, the art continues to look really good. We don't have Lucas Werneck on this book anymore, who did the first 5 issues and who was doing basically the best art in Marvel. We have Luciano Vecchio, who is basically doing the same style, right? He's not like a Absolute Batman we just read, the latest issue of that, if you read it. Totally different art style, new artist. Where this is kind of going the same style. I'm going to say it's still not quite as breathtaking as Lucas Werneck, but that's like the highest bar in Big Two Comics right now. So still really, really good art. It is fun seeing Storm fight a giant anaconda in the Amazon jungle, right? There's no way that's not fun. So I got to give it credit for that. But the character concerns and, I want to know what happened with Omega Maggot. What's going on here? What's up with Storm? Is Eternity just going to let her wander around regular Earth being superpowered without saying, oh, by the way, here's the job I powered you up for? Concerned about that. So I'm going to give Storm number 7 6.5 out of 10. I have some real concerns here.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm going to give it a 7. I enjoyed it more than that, but it is getting a little crazy. I kind of feel like what's happening is this is that, War of Thunder or whatever it's like foreshadowed in whatever that issue was that had the time travel
right
stuff. And I assume
that was the time slide book we're talking about?
Yeah, that might be it, yeah. And the appearance of Thor, I think, is going to lead to whatever that scene was that we saw at the beginning of this issue where Cosmic Ghost Rider fights.
Now, I'm not reading Avengers right now, but last I knew, Thorm had left to do some Thor business. Do we know? Yeah,
he was accused of murder.
Has that been resolved? Do you know?
No.
Okay, so he's back, but we don't know quite why.
And no, it's not. No, it hasn't been resolved. It's no, I don't know if it's been resolved.
Understood. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Okay, that is enough about Storm. Now on to our last book.
Bing bang!
Which is Phoenix number 10. Written by Stephanie Phillips, art by Alessandro Miracolo, colors by David Curiel, letters by Corey Pettit. And Ruben Adani's story finally comes to an end after 10 issues and about 4 issues worth of story. Now, we start with a retelling of Jean's origin, the day when her friend Anne was hit by a car and died, the day when Jean's power awakened.
Yes.
And they don't show the details, but if you ever read that origin, it's kind of Jean's fault. Jean threw a frisbee where it shouldn't have been, playing by the road. Jean, I know you were just a kid at the time, but you killed the asparagus people, and you also kind of killed your friend.
Yeah.
Now, the theme of this issue seems to be the acceptance or rejection of power. Jean has accepted her power, and then more power, and then even more power. Hasn't really had a choice, really. Eventually, Adani, to give away the ending, is going to reject power. And Stephanie Phillips seems to be saying that Jean wishes that she had been able to reject all of her power as well, been a regular kid.
Yeah.
Which is kind
I
of
just
an
read this whole
idea.
thing as a concept on Frisbee golf.
Oh, there's got to be a tie-in.
I wasn't able to get past this whole part. The Frisbee was like so hilarious, like really overstated. You know,
some Phoenix-themed Frolf discs.
Yes.
Yeah, it'll be a big seller for sure.
The moment before I threw the Frisbee into the road, a moment when all I felt was weightlessness.
Now, from an intellectual property point of view, isn't Frisbee a trademark of the Frisbee Corporation? Shouldn't there be a TM there or something? Or has it become generic?
I assume it's generic at this point.
Flying disc. Yeah. So she threw the flying disc, and here we're talking about power. And
if you get into Frisbee golf, your best friend's going to die. Let that be a warning to everybody.
Can't get you off the Frisbee golf thing. That is your favorite thing for this whole issue. I'm trying to get into these big philosophical ideas.
No, you are. I'm sorry.
And you're like, Frisbee golf. So I do think that this could be an interesting concept, right? Jean, this super powerful character, sort of kind of saying, yeah, maybe I should have been just a little girl, which contrasts, I hadn't really put it together until we were doing this podcast, with what Gambit was saying, that he's glad that he got his powers, much, much more limited than being the Phoenix, but he's glad he's not just some regular schmo. He's glad he gets to be, part of the X-Men around Rogue and his buddies. So, back in the present, after our flashback here, the stuff's hitting the fan here at the nexus of all realities. Adani, she still has a chunk of Jean's Phoenix power and is using it to bring the Shadow Realm back into existence and resurrect the rest of Pericus's dark gods for reasons I don't understand. I know she's mad at Jean for allowing Pericus to kill her dad, but I don't know why she's not even more mad at Pericus for doing the killing and why she's doing what he tells her to do.
Yeah.
You understand that at all? Because that is really what loses me for this whole arc.
Yeah.
So, meanwhile, while Adani sets out to ruin the entire universe, Jean and Pericus have a philosophical conversation about Frisbee golf. I mean, about blame and responsibility. Pericus keeps trying to talk about Frisbee golf. That's the crazy thing.
Yes, it's really weird.
Really weird someone would do that. Pericus, after getting off the golf thing, he says that Jean failed Adani all the way back in issue 1. He doesn't say issue 1, but he says when Jean chose to let Pericus escape prison rather than let prisoners die by falling into a black hole. Did Pericus know that Jean was making this specific choice? How did he find out about that? I don't remember that happening on panel, but it's been a long time. Maybe it did. But he knows.
Some sort of Pericus god powers.
Fair enough. He says that by choosing to let him escape, Jean is responsible for everything that Pericus did afterwards. Jean says, nuh-uh, I'm only responsible for the good stuff. I'm only responsible for saving the people I saved, and that you, Pericus, you're responsible for what you have done. Which, I mean, kind of, sort of, right? Kind of oversimplifies the idea of responsibility, because to me, more than one person can be responsible for the same thing, right? You don't have to take away responsibility from Pericus to say that Jean also has responsibility. In physics terms, I'd say that blame is not a conserved quantity, right? You can create more of it out of nowhere, that you can both be responsible for the same thing. But we don't get into any complexities like that here. It's a very simplified version of responsibility. So Jean, she now leaves Pericus, turns to fight the other dark gods. And the pages here, they're cool to look at. They're chaotic, borders between panels being wacky tentacles with eyes and thorns. We've got cherubs floating around with horned black skulls for heads. I couldn't tell you what is happening panel to panel, but it's kind of fun to look at.
It all looks great, but that was my huge problem here. I'm like, I don't know who any of these gods are. I don't know what their powers are. I don't know what is going on. They're having like a fight across multiple dimensions. They talk about that.
Yeah, at one point we do check in on Richard Rider and Rocky the Raccoon shows up. Rocket Raccoon, not Rocky Raccoon. That's a Beatles song. Rocket Raccoon shows up at one point briefly. And yeah, I don't follow what's happening. But again,
there's a part where
cool.
like Jean kills one of them and then like says something about sending their essence to like different places in space and time.
Yeah, she
and I'm
seems
like,
to.
What does that mean? I don't even know the significance of that.
She seems to use her Phoenix powers to basically burn up all of the dark gods, which pretty dark Phoenix of her. At the end of the issue, Jean tells Adani that, I can't or maybe won't bring your father back, but she does give Adani the option of giving up her power and living as a normal little girl of whatever species Adani is. I forget. Adani says, with no real deliberation, she just says, I choose light, and bing, bang, boom, Adani's Phoenix powers and magical sword powers are gone, and she's living on some paradise moon orphanage protected by the Phoenix. And that's the end of Adani's story. Oh God, I hope. Not the end of this issue yet. Not quite. We have to set up the next arc. Now there's some meat to this here. I don't know if it'll be told well, but there's something kind of cool here. Jean gets a psychic phone call, which, that happens a lot. But the person calling her is her sister Sarah, which is odd because Sarah Gray died in an issue of X-Men in 1994. She was killed by mutating humans and then had her body absorbed by the freaking phalanx. So she has been well and truly gone, never seen outside of flashbacks for over 30 years. But she's back now, or someone claiming to be her is back, and all we see is that she's inside a kind of a cathedral-looking building with some suns in the architecture. Don't know if that matters. And she's wearing kind of a green Robin Hood-esque cape.
Yeah.
Now, Ruben, one reason this could be interesting is that when Jean died in the Dark Phoenix saga, one of her deaths, Chris Claremont, he wanted her to stay dead, right? He never wanted Jean to come back, thought it was a bad idea, thought it ruined her as a character,
I think that's probably right.
He thought it ruined Cyclops as a character, because as you remember, Cyclops immediately went off and, found some other girl who looked a lot like his dead girlfriend.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Marvel editorial forced Jean to come back. But he wanted Sister Sarah to be revealed as a mutant, wanted her to join the X-Men, and wanted her power to be the ability to activate X genes in normal humans. Now, that sounds familiar. Is this some sort of crazy long-term continuity connection to 3K and Jed McKay's X-Men? If that happens, I'll have to give Stephanie Phillips and probably Tom Brevoort tons of retroactive credit for telling a story I don't think they were telling, but that could be interesting. I'm going to put low odds on the possibility that it's intentional, but fun to think about.
Yeah, I'd be eating crow. Where it's there's actually a reason for this whole...
It would still be too
Phoenix
long
book
on Adani, but it would be a reason for this book to exist that I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
So yeah, Phoenix number 10, fun to look at, although the fights lack all suspense because Jean's always going to win everything. There's really no panel-to-panel flow of the art, but again, fun to look at. A couple potentially interesting ideas about power and responsibility. Ultimately, they don't really go anywhere, kind of gestured at. This Adani story could have been told in 5 issues instead of 10. And speaking of 5s and 10s, I'm going to give Phoenix number 10 a 5 out of 10.
Yeah.
How about you, my friend?
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at. It looks great. It looks great, but I don't care about Adani. I thought I cared about Pericus, but when it all played out in the end, I just didn't. I was like,
he turned out to be just somebody for Phoenix to rip apart and toss to a different universe.
Yeah. And there's nothing in this that really, I guess the Sarah thing is sort of interesting, but there's really nothing else that would keep me reading this book.
Yeah, that Sarah thing, that's why I'm going to be reading the next issue, and how much we talk about it is probably going to depend on how well it plays out. So maybe we'll talk about Phoenix number 11. I'm sure I'll at least mention what happens, but not crazy about the book, clearly. Okay, that was the last book that we wanted to talk about today. So looking ahead to next week's big book is going to be Exceptional X-Men number 8. We get some more Mr. Sinister stuff going on. He has one of the Exceptionals as a prisoner. See what happens there. We also have X Factor number 9, the penultimate issue of that title. And we have, maybe this is the big book, Wolverine number 8, which is Legacy number 400. And in issue 7, our big criticism was they seem to be treading water to save all the good stuff for the big Legacy number, so let's hope it was worth saving for. Now, I do have some recommended reading for folks, something a little unusual in that it's technically a Marvel magazine, not a comic. It's called Bizarre Adventures number 27. For some reason, for a while, Marvel put out a magazine called Marvel Preview, ran for 24 issues, and then issues 25 through 34, I think, and then when it ended, those last 10 issues were called Bizarre Adventures. I think Marvel, maybe there's some postal reasons why mailing magazines was advantageous, and they weren't technically under the Comics Code Authority, so they could do some other things. Now, Bizarre Adventures number 27 is titled Secret Lives of the X-Men, features multiple stories about different X-Men, but I'm recommending the first story, which is called The Brides of Atuma, which, although Atuma is an undersea ocean kind of character, it is a Jean Grey story. Jean was dead at the time of publication. This is after Dark Phoenix, and the story is told as a flashback at Jean's grave through her sister, Sarah Gray, who we just saw in Phoenix number 10. This story also features the first appearance of Annie Richardson, Jean's friend who died in that tragic Frolf accident, as seen in Phoenix 10. And this is where that story was really first told, where you see how, it's kind of Jean's fault. There's not many issues of Bizarre Adventures available on Marvel Unlimited, but thankfully, Bizarre Adventures number 27 is one of them, so check it out. It's worth looking at. It is in black and white. I guess all the stories in this magazine were in black and white, but it's written by Chris Claremont, and it looks pretty cool. So check that out. And that's all I have to say. Ruben, what do you have to say to wrap up our latest podcast?
Read more X-Men comics.
Get ready, everyone, and you just might survive. Ruben and Jason are here with their X-Men deep dive.
It's like an exhaustive deep dive.
Going through all the X-books is their mission, so get ready for the Learned Edition. Things are getting weird and
Order the steak!
Ruben hopes another sword book gets announced this year. It's the
Ruben,
Weird Dose
Ruben.
of X, the X-Men comic show. It's the Weird Dose of X, guaranteed. It's the Weird Dose of X, guaranteed not to blow.
How dare you!
Accept your mind. It's the Weird Dose of X, the